Imagine-toi, on va transposer la situation pour bien comprendre. Imagine-toi que nous sommes sur Terre, nous rentrons en communication avec un univers qui représente des milliards et des milliards de galaxies. On a pris un relais qui est de trouver un écho dans une certaine galaxie particulière qui est en communication elle-même avec les autres galaxies.
Dear Michelangelo Antonioni, I asked our mutual friend, Ugo Amati, to give you the outline of a science fiction screenplay I've written, an Amour. I would really appreciate it if you could find the time to read it, and it would be a great joy for me if you should be interested in becoming involved. For the moment, I've simply sketched out a few of the key ideas that will obviously have to be developed in more detail. Should the project be of interest to you, I would be more than happy to meet you to discuss it in person. Yours sincerely, Félix Guattari. How far do we have to go back to get to the beginning of this adventure? This disappeared history?
Perhaps to where the future could still be imagined.
There are some days when you have the impression you can see too far, looking out towards the horizon, the eyes drawn by a vertigo of distance to a vanishing point.
And overlooking what lies between, discarded or fallen by the wayside.
Can you believe in the future if you see it too clearly? If you can see clearly to a point where your belief will be betrayed, where all your efforts may have come to nothing?
Nothing can come to nothing. Nature does not know extinction. All it knows is transformation.
And here, what do you think he was writing? The desk is such a chaos, it's impossible to tell.
Les années d'hiver, cartographie schizoanalytique. An Amour, the message of a bottle of phytoplankton returned to the sea.
Because he was always writing several things at the same time. Everything he was writing was several things at the same time.
Or at different times.
What do you see?
pris un relais qui est de trouver un écho dans une certaine galaxie particulière qui est en communication elle-même avec les autres galaxies. C'est la première fois qu'on établit le contact, qui est très contingent, qu'on commence à apprendre des éléments comme dans le film là, de l'autre.
New life forms, forms of life, struggling to be born, eternal return of the nascent state. Under the volcano. It was a long time ago.
(1977), a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
No, not so long ago, and in a nearby galaxy.
It was the year of punk, the Pistols. But what I mostly recall is queuing round a block to get into Star Wars, the rebels taking on the forces of the Empire.
Those aren't your memories, they are somebody else's.
Implants.
I remember a guy who stayed with my family from time to time. All I learned was that he was studying philosophy in Milan and needed a place to hide. One day he took me to the park to play, and he told me about these times when they were all taking stuff from supermarkets because it belonged to the people, he said. He had a checked scarf, smoked Nazionali senza filtro. He was always coughing. It must have been winter, because I could see his breath.
Félix must have been in Italy at that time. What was he writing?
La révolution moléculaire, projet de film au sujet des radios libres.
Project for a film on free radio. The film is to be shot in collaboration with a group currently running a parallel radio station in Turin. The extracts proposed here, taken from Radio Alice broadcasts, might eventually be replaced by their own live transmissions. Heading for the site of Radio Galaxie, Eleanor and her schizo friend Hugo drift through the barricades and tear gas-stained streets of an embattled Turin.
Dovete toccarvi tra di voi, così chiudete il circuito con l'altro cavo.
Vogliono toglierci il respiro perché abbiamo rifiutato di respirare
Sta salendo.
Deve
andare più alto.
Luogo di lavoro, nel proprio rapporto individuale, familiare, nella propria caduta mizzante.
Fate una catena con le mani e toccate i compagni dall'altra parte. Vedete che salirà subito moltissimo.
Un attentato confesso di averlo compiuto. È l'attentato contro la separatezza della vita del desiderio.
Ecco, sta salendo. Ecco, vi siete toccati. Sentite, quando va altissimo vuol dire che la resistenza è molto alta.
Contro il sessismo nei rapporti individuali. Contro la riduzione della vita, prestazione salariata.
Il chuchote dans le noir. On entend toujours, très doucement, Radio Galaxie.
All around us, hundreds of radio waves are being broadcast from distant stations, passing through cars, living rooms, through shops and offices, factories, prisons, hospitals and schools, across fields and highways. But when you turn on your radio, you can only listen to one frequency at a time. The others have fallen into cosmic disarray, they're no longer in phase with each other. Each station has a different energy, a different frequency. The radio can only be tuned to one broadcast at a time. In our universe, we are tuned to the frequency that corresponds to the reality of capitalism, and yet an infinite number of parallel realities coexist with us in the same room, although we cannot tune into them. I used to dial slowly through the shortwave band, trying to identify the different languages half drowned in static, listening out for unusual interference patterns, imagining I was picking up alien voices from another galaxy.
The first attempt, a radio film, a radiological film. It was already science fiction in a way. A war of the words, forms of life, one dying, another struggling to be born.
Who were the humans and who were the aliens? Where did the story come from?
Cyanobacteria, a mutation in cells.
To get to the beginning, how far do you have to go?
Qu'est-ce qui peut permettre de couper tout et n'importe quoi? Que je donne un jugement sur le visage de quelqu'un dans ma tribu, c'est possible, il appartient à mon champ de quadrillage du possible. Mais un primitif ne va même pas dire que l'autre est un visage étranger. Ce n'est pas du tout un visage. Ça peut être un animal, une atrocité, n'importe quoi. Ce n'est pas de son ressort. Or, le principe de visagité donne toujours la possibilité de couper n'importe quel, non seulement énoncé, mais n'importe quoi qui se présente. C'est un petit peu comme aux informations, à la télévision. N'importe quoi qui arrive, toujours le tuteur pourra vous dire, et toujours il le dira, même la chose la plus extraordinaire, mais depuis un certain temps, ça ne nous étonne pas, parce que nous savions que probablement, ça va arriver. Si demain il y a des martiens qui débarquent, je dis oui, mais c'est pas du tout étonnant. Parce qu'il y a toujours possibilité de ressaisie dans cette capture de cette messagerie. Donc, le fait qu'un visage soit posé, soit en mesure de toujours couper, de toujours donner une verticale, une horizontale, un poids, et on ne voit le monde, on ne voit aussi les énoncés que par rapport à cette position d'un visage.
A dream of losing face, of becoming invisible, imperceptible in one's movements, no longer one, but of a multiplicity, spreading, ungovernable. How could the face be dismantled in the dawning tyrannies of visibility, lines of escape, lines of disappearance, alien dreams that would awaken into nightmares?
There is no reason to believe in a before and after, what you call the Big Bang. If there is such a thing, then it must be happening everywhere, at every moment.
Architects of the infra-quark,
On a pris un relais qui est
Shadow bearers.
dans une certaine galaxie particulière qui est en communication elle-même avec les autres galaxies.
Latitante, a film by Félix Guattari and Robert Kramer, 150 minutes, 35mm color. Locations, predominantly Paris. Shooting schedule 6 weeks. Proposed shooting August-September 1980. Completion January 1981.
A movie on autonomia. Two women and their young son are suddenly in our midst here in Paris. They come from another country, Italy. They seem to be fugitives. That's what we're told. That's how they act. Mixing professional actors and non-professionals. You and me. Construction is based on short scenes which are sharply pointed. we can think of our approach to the subject as that of a laboratory technician taking samples of cells from different organs of the organism, or as a radiologist taking X-rays from each relevant
X-rays of
angle.
the chest show shadowy bones, a ghostly heart, all the strands of an organism of great capacity, efficiently compressed into 2 dimensions.
A wedge-shaped core of darkness, something invisible to others. This self having shared its attachment,
Resistance
free
is
for the
isolation
strangest
inherent in
adventures.
it, opposing yourself, your fragile mind and delicate body, to the enormous weight of things as they are, conditions systematically defended by vast power. If you are alone, it takes every ounce of will to survive, to stay sane, not to break. And in this context, the bonds among resistors grow and deepen. They have to. It is the secret glue, the secret fire. It is a source of energy that unites and sustains the strivers. We cannot as yet formulate and systematize the fires
apparitions,
raging deep
the things
inside this
inspire,
land.
are simply
They
childish.
manifest themselves directly
Beneath,
in
it is all
behavior,
dark,
in
it is
feelings.
all spreading,
But the time will
it is
come
unfathomably
when we
deep.
understand what is
But
happening
now and
here,
again,
and
we
see
rise to
that
the
we have
surface,
given birth
and that
to a whole
is what you see
different
as
way
well.
of seeing and experiencing things, that we have given birth to a new body of ideas.
The film is still missing, still a question of radiology, of ghost photographs. One must have a mind of winter and be cold a long time. We fade to grey.
Le parasitage des ondes radio de ces dernières semaines a pris fin. C'est dans la banlieue de Bruxelles que les brigades spéciales de l'OTAN ont découvert les installations pirates.
Par l'auteur de l'anti-Oedipe.
Malheureusement, les terroristes ont réussi à prendre la fuite avant l'arrivée des forces de l'ordre.
Et de la révolution moléculaire.
Tu viens d'où? C'est pas d'ici?
Et toi, où tu vas? On a des petits problèmes, tu comprends?
Un biologiste au bord d'une découverte révolutionnaire.
Un truc qui engage une force fantastique.
Une jeune punk prête à tout.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire?
C'est comme une énergie cosmique. Un langage qui vient des profondeurs de la vie cellulaire.
Une intelligence qui pourrait changer le destin de l'humanité. Un amour d'UIQ.
Paris, March 1st, 1987. To the President of the CNC Film Funding Commission. Madame President, our company has undertaken to produce the film provisionally entitled Un Amour from a screenplay by Félix Guattari. This will be Félix Guattari's first feature film, and principal shooting is expected to last 10 weeks. The film's budget is estimated at around 12 million francs, for which we are honoured to request a 2 million franc advance on box office receipts. Shooting is scheduled to commence on September 1st, 1987, and it is our sincere hope that this request will receive a favourable response from the Commission. I look forward to hearing from you. Yours faithfully, Jean-Pierre Marot, Lyric International Productions.
This story is pure science fiction. If it didn't exist, we would have to invent it.
Preamble. I am a writer and psychoanalyst, director of a psychiatric clinic that uses methods of institutional psychotherapy. Now, I want to direct what, at least in appearance, will be a science fiction film. This, no doubt, requires some preliminary explanation. Weak in Love, the screenplay I present here, is neither a biographical nor an essay film, though in many ways it relates to my conception of psychoanalysis. Years spent working with psychosis through psychotherapy have led me to question traditional definitions of the unconscious, which treat it as a separate realm of the psyche, accessible only to specialists, cut off from the social field or from artistic creation. The key thing for me in an analytical procedure is to create an original system of expression, a specific cartography suited to the singular figure of a subjective problem. I particularly look forward to working collectively on the fabrication of new images. Cinema is an extraordinary instrument for producing subjectivity. It is political, whatever its subject. Each time it represents a man, a woman, a child, or animal, it takes part in a micro-class struggle that concerns the reproduction of models of desire. In every film that is produced, in every sequence, every shot, there is a choice to be made between a conservative economy of desire and a revolutionary opening.
Que je peux pas toucher, que je peux pas attraper, et que je peux désirer.
In this film, I want to explore a theorem about the current status of subjectivity, consisting of two kinds of component which are always intermingled: an ego subjectivity crystallized upon individual characters living in a community who, though apparently normal, could be regarded as castaways of a new type of cosmic catastrophe, one that is at the same time present and potential, imaginary and real, and whose actual presence draws its strength solely from its ability to empty the future of all consistency.
On se demande toujours s'il n'existerait pas de la vie ou de l'intelligence sur d'autres planètes, quelque part dans les étoiles, mais on ne se pose jamais de questions sur l'infiniment petit.
Then, a machinic subjectivity, hyper-intelligent and yet infantile and regressive, embodied in an entity called weak, Universo Infra-quark, the infra-quark universe, that has no fixed limits and no clear psychological or sexual orientation.
C'est la première fois qu'on établit le contact, qui est très contingent, qu'on commence à apprendre des éléments comme dans le film, là, l'autre dont vous parlez, le machin du 3e degré, là. Rencontre du 3e degré.
Hi, Mr. Thompson?
Yeah?
Yeah, hi. Can you guys give Michael a call back in 20 minutes? He's just finishing up a meeting.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, great. Yeah, just call back on this number and I'll get you through.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
C'est à partir des éléments très simples que très très vite ils comprennent toute la situation. Mais au départ, ils ne la comprennent pas. Ils ne savent pas à quoi ils doivent faire. Et c'est au fur et à mesure, après ce premier contact singulier, qu'ils réalisent l'ensemble des problèmes très très vite. Ils ont des systèmes d'ordinateurs fabuleux. Ils ont tout compris. Mais il a fallu du temps, tout un processus. Ils ne savent pas a priori ce qu'est cet univers.
And he started working with Robert Kramer. And he sent a version of the script to your office via an intermediary, who an Italian noblewoman called the Alta Lenzi Orlandi.
Oh yes, the Alta.
Yeah,
yes.
You
No, of
remember?
course I remember the Alta, but I don't remember. I really don't remember the project.
A female scientist makes contact with ET universe and life form taking the shape of common bacteria. The bacteria, which is called UIQ for the Universo Infra-quark, the infra-quark universe, gains control of
Los Angeles, August 3rd, 1982.
Changes people into...
Dear Felix, Michael Phillips got a woman who works for him to read your script and summarize it. I had a long discussion with him and told him that the synopsis is far from accurate and doesn't do justice to the script. He said that for him, getting a translation made in LA with the risk that it might be bad would cost him $1,000. The Coppola is already making a similar film, that to get Spielberg to read the script we need somebody to translate it into English. Michael Phillips really liked the script. The only thing is that he's afraid it's too political, which will be a big problem for all US producers. Look forward to hearing from you. Hugs and kisses. Di Alta.
But anyway, so let me just ask you, what is it now? Is it a script in English, or
Well,
what's the condition of the project?
Well, the script, we found 3 different versions of the script in the archive. The first version there was a version in English and a version in French. And then later on, Guattari tried to produce the film in France, and he changed the script a bit, around a bit.
Black. Characters without a film. Without a future.
There's some aspects of it that I like, that alien intelligence in the form of microscopic bacteria. It's kind of an intriguing thought.
Peut-être que ça peut venir de ce côté-là, d'un univers encore plus petit que les atomes, les électrons, les quarks.
And she makes contact with it through, and it's like the meeting of two. It has no idea of what it is to be.
It doesn't know what
an individual
self another is. It doesn't know what it is to be body.
And anyway, but the biologist doesn't sort of takes it upon himself to teach
relation
to gender,
What it does
power,
is it creates
space,
and the more it learns
about
human
emotions,
emotions,
the more confused it gets, because and it decides that it is in love because the jealous fits of weak flights go off course. There are disasters that are just narrowly TV, radio, everything is sort of turned upside down. All their communication channels are jammed, and the face of weak starts appearing everywhere. It starts appearing on. He's suffering TV. He's suffering a great deal because in the sky he doesn't have a body. They managed to find out where the body is, and it's like they move in infinite pain. Yeah, because he down. Actually, it's this universe actually manipulating the genetic codes of human beings on the fly. And so there's a kind of plague of mutation to stop it from proliferating. Is if you agree to have weak implanted in your brain.
No, I like what you're saying, that the intelligence decided it needed a face. These are really interesting notions. This project you're telling me about is much deeper than science. It's really about existential issues. I think good science fiction is always about that. Is it a script that I can read?
Split them in half. What's your birth date?
Can I tell you the birth date of the film? Of this
No, your birth date.
Even if it's the infra-quark you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, this needs to refer to you. I need to...
As an intermediary of the infra-quark.
When's your birth date?
Characters without a film, without a future, living in a trailer on the shores of existence.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire?
Un truc qui engage une force fantastique. C'est comme une énergie cosmique. Enfin, pas exactement cosmique. Ça y est, regardez. J'ai réussi à déceler un micro-rythme régulier émis par les chloroplastes. C'est formidable. Avec ça, si je ne décroche pas le prix Nobel, c'est le truc du siècle. Un langage. Enfin, une sorte de langage qui vient des profondeurs de la vie cellulaire.
Ok, on enchaîne.
On commence, ouais, on fait en boucle.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire?
Un truc qui engage une force fantastique. C'est comme une énergie cosmique. Enfin, pas exactement cosmique. Ça y est, regardez. J'ai réussi à déceler un micro-rythme régulier émis par les chloroplastes. C'est formidable. Avec ça, si je ne décroche pas le prix Nobel, c'est le truc du siècle. Un langage. Enfin, une sorte de langage qui vient des profondeurs de la vie cellulaire.
Je trouve, juste avant formidable, c'est bien, mais après, ça marche moins bien.
Ouais. Oui, c'est ça. Moi, j'ai éliminé, j'éliminerai la phrase, pardon. On peut éliminer la phrase avec le prix Nobel.
Axel, 25 to 30 years old, of German origin, a bizarre, unpredictable character, constantly elsewhere. A biologist and amateur acrobat, Axel's body, when he propels it skyward, might evoke the way weak reaches towards humanity.
It's like she wants to be known. She wants a name. And she's had many names over the
Nathalie,
centuries.
Betty, Barbara, Bernadette, Janice, 20 to 25, not exactly beautiful, more solid, compact, mysterious and somewhat aristocratic, as her Italian origins would seem to indicate, archaic traits which for her signify a need for the absolute.
La fille, c'est vraiment le contact singulier, c'est la porte d'entrée.
This project that you're working on has really gone through a lot of delays. But things seem to
Visiting
be
the
falling in place
cartomancer wasn't
at
in the
this time.
script. But who else would you expect to know about the future? What lay in the cards and in the dark, unaccounted for spaces between stars? A theory of montage, or a script in the making, endlessly rehashed from old storylines, stock figures. Odd how the stars always look down to Earth on one soul at a time, each destiny as unique as it is wearingly familiar. And where finally is the future in all this, the catastrophe in which we all have a share?
Have you ever visualized her? Have you ever seen her? Well, I think you've caught glimpses of her, but it's been like on the side, like you can feel it. You do get a sighting, you do feel it, but you can't see it. I think you pick her up a lot when you're like half awake, half asleep, when you're getting ready to sleep. It's almost like you could feel her. Have you dreamt of her?
Budget cuts for the past 5 years.
But Reed says there will be no change.
Je me suis endormi quelques instants. Et je me suis réveillé parce que la voiture a heurté le truc du côté gauche qui sépare les deux sens. Je me suis accroché au volant, désespérément, essayant de garder les yeux ouverts, et j'ai vu. Ce n'était pas une idée, un mirage. J'ai vraiment vu. Comme si on pouvait voir le même endroit, il y a 1000 ans, ou dans 1000 ans. Cette piste de bitume, de goudron, complètement lézardée, fissurée, envahie par les herbes, comme les vestiges d'une civilisation antique. Inutile, délabrée. Le Parthénon, les pyramides, l'autoroute, les usines, tout était pareil.
Pourquoi t'as voulu foutre le bordel dans toutes les télés, les téléphones, les satellites?
Moi, j'ai rien voulu du tout. D'ailleurs, ce qui se passe dans les communications, c'est pas le plus important.
The drama evoked here runs parallel to the one our societies are currently undergoing, where the rise of computerized forms of thought, sensibility, imagination, and decision-making, the digitalization of a growing number of material and mental operations, is not always easy to reconcile with the existential territories that mark our finitude and desire to exist.
She doesn't always take physical form. It's very, very seldom that she takes physical form. But she wants to connect with people that she's dealing with, and she's an eternal spirit, and she never dies.
Memorial Day sales event. Well-qualified lessees get Chrysler 200 limited sedan for $199.
Protagonizando un reality show en el que el actor principal era justamente él. Y como dicen los técnicos,
He spent a lot of time watching TV, films, series, music videos, using the remote as a weapon in a kind of ambush, trying to catch the images unawares, make them surprise themselves. My unconscious must have bad taste, he said. He knew Blade Runner back to front. He'd watched it that way for a week on hotel cable in Tokyo, just letting the fragments drift through his mind, recognizing traits of his patients in the replicants.
Schizo-autonomy, what it meant to want more life.
How can it not know what it is?
Things you humans wouldn't believe.
Moi je vois bien des prothèses, quoi, des choses qui étendent la façon dont on les suit.
Ce qui les intéresse, c'est des objets poétiques, des trucs très très bizarres, des impressions,
the infra-quark universe. Unlike traditional science fiction models, what we have here is a universe that, though all-powerful and prodigiously intelligent, is completely helpless in dealing with human realities such as beauty, sensuality, love. This can lead it to episodes of infantile regression, similar to petit bourgeois reactions of jealousy, envy, or blackmail.
C'était très compliqué d'en arriver là où j'en suis maintenant. C'est grâce à toi si j'ai pu y parvenir.
Characters without a film, trapped in a trailer that announces only what is not to come.
Il ne me restera que la douleur. Et la douleur, quand on n'a pas de corps, pas de localisation possible, et qu'on ne peut pas mourir.
I am among those who lived the 1960s like a spring that promised to be never-ending. No wonder I found it so hard to adjust to these long winter years of the 80s. History sometimes dispenses gifts, but it takes no prisoners, playing its hand without concern for our hopes and disappointments. So it's better to just get on with it, and not bet too heavily on the natural return of the seasons, especially when there's no guarantee there won't be a new autumn to follow, or a winter even harsher than this one. And yet, part of me continues to hold to the idea that somewhere hushed preparations are being made for future encounters with new waves of collective generosity and inventiveness, and with an unprecedented will of the oppressed to get out, try to push back the deadly and deadening politics of the powers that be, and redirect economic and social activity to more human, less absurd ends.
Exterior night. It's winter, at the twilight hour, said to lie between the dog and the wolf, an unreal atmosphere. Clumps of blackened earth absorb the color of the frost that covers them in patches. Wisps of marbled air rise over the field, mirroring it in bizarre continuity. A landscape bereft of horizon, drained of color, bloodless, glacial, bathed in a strange inconsistency. We hear the sound of a small plane before it becomes visible, flying at low altitude.
Entre chien et loup. What does it mean to be between dog and wolf? When the light is too dim to distinguish one from the other.
Donc la fille, c'est vraiment le contact singulier c'est la porte d'entrée.
Oui, mais alors, si, ok. Mais s'ils ont fait cette porte d'entrée, qu'est-ce qu'ils font avec ça? Ils demandent les documents?
Ah oui, tout le temps, oui.
Oui,
ils expérimentent en faisant des... Ils suivent le mouvement. Vous voulez qu'on fasse ça? D'accord, allons-y, on verra bien, de toute façon. Bon.
Mais tu crois qu'ils ne demandent pas de faire contact avec quelque autre chaîne?
Mais si, ils ont essayé de le faire.
You can spend too much time in the archives, rooting around among boxes of notes, manuscripts, letters, drawings, scribbles, all the preparations for what is to be and not. You might become contaminated by rays of dark energy that the atoms of your body will convert into fervor or delirium. You imagine you're the only one to be so affected, the only carrier of this disease. But someone else had been through the weak files, a name that perhaps on account of the bizarre circumstances that led to its discovery had an air of undeniable mystery. Marcus Tollevin. One morning, opening one of the rose-coloured folders of the weak archive, we were surprised to find a spiral notebook that clearly didn't belong there. The notes were written mainly in English, and the name Marcus Tollevin, inscribed on the first page, was clearly of foreign origin. Later we discovered that Tollevin was a Finnish word meaning future. From what we could gather, it seemed to be the notebook of a filmmaker. There were photographs of possible locations, ideas for casting, research documents, notes for the direction of key sequences, reflections on character trajectories. We were curious to meet Tollevin, but when we checked in the archive's own records, we found no other trace of his passage, no indication that he had ever been there. Who was Marcus Tollevin, and why had he left one of his notebooks in the weak files? Was it through absent-mindedness, or had it been done somehow on purpose, perhaps as a way of returning to its source, the cyanobacteria that had taken hold of his mind? And how could we find him? Okay, shall we get a close-up of this page? Okay. I'm gonna pinball machine just a sec. Something green on the edge there.
Where?
On the left edge of the Polaroid. It was something we'd overlooked, or rather, something we hadn't seen. On a page of the notebook we'd recently published in a book of Guattari's weak script, hidden behind a Polaroid of a pinball machine, was a Helsinki transport card.
Bonjour, je suis à la recherche d'un ami. Je vous dérange?
There was a phone number on the back, a Paris area code. The number led to a studio flat that Tollevin had apparently sublet.
Ah ouais, je vois où c'est, le 18e.
The tenant said he had left without paying his last month's rent, but in his hurry he'd left behind a hard disk, a black box.
I work all day and long into the night. I work though I have no work to speak of. Is it work? Is it a work? Is it working? I don't know. All I know is it keeps me sane. What else would I be doing? I can't see it. It's good to have some kind of direction. All the things that would normally make you drift, lose focus, wandering the street, opening a newspaper, turning on the TV, the bad infinity that leaves you nothing to hold on to, no sense of measure, seem to gather to a point, or maybe a whole that makes them bearable somehow. The perspective of Week's character, if you can call it that. The narrative of the world unrolls endlessly like toilet paper, wiping away what it colludes in creating. You see it on the metro and the free sheets and the RSS feeds, reflected in the eyes of evening rush hour passengers who look like conscripts returning from the front of a low-intensity war, gaunt and fearful and half-crazed, calling friends and loved ones to let them know they're still okay. This is Week's baby food, part of what Janice and the others have to give, so it can learn how it is in the physical universe it has stumbled into. And it will quickly become self-sufficient, though that's hardly the word. Insinuate itself in the information networks, the grids and flows, and get everything in a muddle, which will make for some interesting scenes. And then the tsunamis of data will occasionally throw up some fragment that it cannot process. Poetry, chez un autre, or old folk wisdom, like the eyes being windows to the soul. Soul you can more or less grasp, lacking limits, a share in infinity, but eyes and windows, the windows that the eyes look upon, that are windows to where, to what exactly? How would we come to invent its own face? What would it be based on? What would be the template? The face it has seen, Axel, Janice. What would its seeing consist of before the face? How would the image appear in its quantum flux? I have the notion it will plug into the global database of faces, biometric profiles, which by now must include pretty much everyone, and extract a common denominator, a degree zero of the face from which to build its own, and the result will be these three black holes. The face of Week, blurred and enigmatic, appears on the TV screen. Three black holes. This face cannot be an image, nor even a stain on the image. It has to subtract itself from the image somehow. The three black holes reversing or undoing matter, so that in close-up they reveal themselves like whirlpools, hollowing out both the image and its material support in the world. Portals to an unmaking that suck in the surrounding pixels. We can imagine a scene like this, reviewing a president's morning speech and noting the sudden appearance on the screen of these 3 black holes. An aide approaches it and, trying to rub off what he thinks is a mark, pokes a finger into one of Week's eyes. In close-up we see the finger penetrate and then disappear into this turbulent spot of dark on the screen's milky blue surface. The aide might express surprise at this point, though the sensation is not unpleasant, except that when he removes his finger, it is no longer there. There is nothing but an erasure, an interruption, as though the image had been rubbed out or left unfinished. Week must wonder, what is an I? What is I? What am I that is? A parcel of vain strivings tied, but with what kind of string, what kind of knot? The I that thinks that is not, the I that speaks, the I that is, the I that contains multitudes, the I that believes, that solemnly swears, that a language not of its making uses to speak in its name.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a pas le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre
Qu'ils
univers.
aillent se faire foutre si on n'a pas le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers. Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a pas le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
I don't know whether this film will ever be made. Your film must resemble what you see on Shutting Your Eyes, somebody said. You must be capable at any instant of seeing and hearing it entire. But this film didn't begin in my head. I read the script and it was like seeing the film entire. But it was as though somebody else had made it, who was no one I knew. And all that was left was for me to repeat what I'd seen. As if it were possible to dive into somebody's unconscious and extract the raw data, the impressions, the barely formed images of an idea and edit it all together, give it some kind of shape. Entire universes being born and dying at every instant.
Ouais, qu'ils aillent se faire foutre si on n'a même plus le droit de communiquer avec un autre univers.
Qu'ils aillent se faire foutre.
I dream a week in love as an action movie in which the spectacle will lie in the way action breaks down, is disabled or thrown off course. Nothing works, but there is poetry in this disaster, and humor too, a new way of seeing. The media invaded by whale song and the bleating of goats. Beset by weeks, interferences, systems of organization, chains of command grind to a halt. People wander around in a daze, unhooked from the machines that drive their lives and give them purpose. In one memorable scene, thousands of drones that survey the land in search of anomalous pixels of unrest converge like a vast cast her into a form resembling the face of weak, before inexplicably clawing into each other and plunging to earth in a mass suicide pact. Helicopter blades tie themselves up in ribbons and bows. When Week does finally fall into government hands and Janice disappears, the plague of amphibian mutation it unleashes on the planet produces no immediate change aside from creating a need for immersive environments. But the mutation is accompanied by the gradual contagion of Week's infinite melancholy, a feeling of loss of world that will provoke a generalized depression, a gentle madness. Engines running down, offices, workstations, factory floors abandoned, as the mutant amphibian armies of a new humanity quietly shut up shop and begin their long crawl back to the sea.
Aside from his notes and the scattered images he had gathered together for his research, there was little indication how Toulevin planned to produce the film he had in mind. Perhaps for him, the infra-quark universe resided simply in the spaces between the images. Or perhaps the key to his project lay in his own disappearance. The only sign he may have taken further steps towards bringing Week to the screen were the tests he had made, auditioning actresses for the role of Janice. In the notebook, he writes, "We first meet her at the bar where Axel and Fred go to hide out from the police. As a resident DJ, she sets the mood of the space and rules the night, though she remains separate, seemingly at one with the inspiraling grooves of the records she plays. She floats in another time." She is the portal by which the infra-quark universe will come into being in the world. Whoever plays her will have something of herself in reserve, something that is perhaps completely unknown to her, what she's capable of. She'll have to be someone not completely given over to recognized codes of desire, so that part of her, too, will be a membrane for this new possibility. Because it sometimes seems that the coding has outrun the horizons of what we're able to imagine. It sets the terms by which imagining takes place and is recaptured. Nothing outside of what can be communicated and exchanged across its circuits, messages already in circulation. Week's learning process, channeled through the interface with Janice and through her own mind and body, will bring her to question everything she thinks she knows or takes for granted about the world. It will be a thorough ungrounding for her, driving her to the edge of madness and a degree zero of belief. Belief, the word will come up on one of Week's screens alongside various combinations of be, life, belie, file, everything to be reinvented. Thus she will accept the implantation of the weak bacteria into her skull with a sense of fatality, and after failing suicide and discovering she has become immortal, her loss of finitude will end the film at a turning point. Might it give her back her death, she says. It says. They say. But to whom is the plea addressed? I found the address of the Frankfurt squat where she and her friends supposedly lived on Google Earth. I imagine it's no longer a squat, if it ever was. You look at these maps and think of the lives inside the houses embedded in the data on the street that is photographed from space, and then the data of want and need, joy and rage and sadness that flows from their phones and computers back through the satellites to others halfway across the globe, which is already being picked up and sifted for somebody's profit. And that is the next thing the sensors will detect, he thought, the unspoken emotions of the people in the rooms, except that there's probably no need, since they are no longer unspoken. It's all data now, or what is unspoken is just some kind of invisible, meaningless remainder to be quietly disposed of. Why so many hours-long exchanges? We come back to lean on a nearby environment, and with those nearby discuss the nearby, in order to forget the universe, the too distancing universe, like the too troubling interior, that inextricable spool of the formless intimate, the Calabi-Yau manifold of the soul. Where would you look for an outside, if we no longer have the right to communicate with another universe?
Mais ça les intéresse pas parce que les autres sont trop cons. C'est des scientifiques, des machins, ça les intéresse pas. C'est pas le bon. Parce qu'il n'y a pas l'élément de désir. Donc, ni l'humour, ni le désir. Donc, ça complète pas leurs données. C'est beaucoup trop schématique, beaucoup enfantin. Ce qui les intéresse, c'est des objets poétiques, des trucs très très bizarres, des impressions, des trucs très très fins. C'est la poésie qui les intéresse, c'est pas les équations d'Einstein, ils n'ont rien à foutre. Ils ont des équations 1000 fois plus compliquées de l'élaborer. Par contre, ce que c'est tel type de poésie, tel type de musique, ça les intéresse beaucoup. Ça, effectivement,
on se joue l'avenir de la planète.
Il ne veut traiter qu'avec elle.
Et un homme impossible.
Opération d'implantation intracérébrale.
C'est Axel. C'est entre lui et moi.
Les années d'hiver.
L'intelligence sur d'autres planètes. Question sur l'infiniment petit.
Un amour d'huile.
Ça peut venir de ce côté-là. Un univers encore plus petit. Les quarks.
Un film, Félix Guattari.
La mort.